The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Welcome to Getting to Know You. My name is Joe Nash. Today we're going to be talking to Joe Coffey. He is the Commissioner of the City of Albany's Department of Water and Water Supply. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thanks
for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about the history of the City of Albany's water, which might not sound like an interesting topic, but the water supply of a city like us is an absolutely vital thing. So I was asking before we started, how far back do you want to start?
Well, we can go back all the way, but it's interesting when you say how water is vital, and I'll just kind of give you an anecdote. A couple years ago, there was an article in the Albany Business Review when they were talking to local business leaders and elected officials, and they were saying, what are some of the most important things that spur economic development in the Capital District, upstate New York? And we would talk about nanotechnology and education system, the colleges, universities, the capital of the state. And I think it was the mayor of Amsterdam who said it's a safe, large supply of potable water. And when you think about it in that context, if we didn't have water, we don't have anything. Wow. And when you look at different parts of the country at that time, there was a significant drought in California, challenges in water supply in the southeast. And here in the northeast, we're fortunate because we do have an abundant supply of really good, high-quality drinking water.
I know you were telling me before we started, in the southwest, it's a big issue, like in the...
It was a big issue. It's a little less of an issue now because I think they've had so much snowfall in the last little, but it just shows how volatile the water supply is in different parts of the country. And even here in New York, we get our water from the Alcove Reservoir in the town of Queens. And last October, our reservoir was down about 10 feet from its spilling elevation. And that's down quite a bit, and it hadn't spilled over the spillway in nearly 3 years. And this year we've spilled 80 days because we had a lot of rainfall and snowfall over the winter, and makes a big difference.
It is something people take for granted, I think, though.
You know, we do. When people talk about the value, you don't understand the value of water until you don't have it. And I think at that point it's tough to put a price on it. People talk about water. We sell 1,000 gallons of water in the city of Albany for $3.60 for 1,000 gallons.
Okay.
If you're buying bottled water, you get a case of bottled water. It's not 1,000 gallons, and you're spending $3.60. So
that is a good deal.
It's a pretty good. We think it's a great deal.
So, like all old northeastern cities, you're just talking about the Northeast. The history of the water supply goes way back. So. Start where you think would be a good place for people. I mean, we don't want to go back to the 1600s, but start.
Well, just briefly, if you go back to the 1600s, you know, originally we were a Dutch settlement, and you think about Pearl Street, Broadway, State Street. That was really Albany, and at that time, most of the water came from rain barrels, and they had streams that were flowing from upper parts of the city that they would take their water from. And as you get sanitation issues, the quality of that water deteriorates a little bit. So pretty quickly after that, they developed a reservoir, kind of a storage area that would be actually where the state office building is. And
was that something that was there, or they built it?
They kind of built it there, and that's kind of a natural place where water was kind of collected. And shortly thereafter, they actually started looking for a source of supply that was a little less influenced by sanitary issues in the city, and they actually developed and used ponds that are currently out near Wolford Truth. It was the Maesland Kill, I think it was called, and that was probably the later 1700s. That water was then piped to the city and stored in a reservoir, kind of like where City Hall is right now, right in that general neighborhood.
Was the Hudson ever used?
It was later on, and I maybe kind of let me get there a little bit. As the city grew and expanded westward, there were additional reservoirs that were used to replace the Maesland Kill supply.
Were these rereservoirs built, or were they natural?
They were kind of natural. In some places they had to dam, but there's like lakes at Tivoli, the Tivoli Lake area. That was a reservoir. And around 1850, where the 6 Mile Waterworks is, Lake Rensselaer, that was actually dammed at that point to create the 6 Mile Reservoir, 6 Mile Waterworks. and that was then piped to where Bleecker Stadium is now, and that was a reservoir.
Where Bleecker
So where
Stadium
Bleecker
is.
Stadium is now, that was actually the Bleecker Reservoir, and water was stored there, and that was like from 1850 to about the 1870s. And as the city kept growing a population, they needed more water. You know, they wanted to drink more water downtown, and at that point they started using the Hudson River.
And this would have been
1870s,
Okay.
about the 1870s in that era. And again, that water would be pumped to these reservoirs, so we had pressure in different parts of the city. So it was like multiple reservoirs being used and multiple sources of
Okay.
supply. And, you know, with the Hudson, we weren't the only city on the
Yeah.
Hudson River. So you have Troy, Watervliet, the cities that were discharging their wastewater into the Hudson. And at some point, dilution helps, but you cannot take everything out of the river. So there were opportunities where even trying to filter the water out of the Hudson, you couldn't get all the contaminants out of it. So that at some point it gets to be a problem. And even though the Hudson River was being used, slow sand filtration, which was Albany was one of the first cities really to use slow sand filtration in the United States. I think Poughkeepsie might have been the first one.
And how does that work?
It's just where water's pumped into the sand and it filters through
Okay.
the sand at some
Okay.
point. That really tends to take a lot of the impurities out of it. Then it was pumped where the pump station is now,
Yeah.
where the restaurant, that was actually a real pump station. And they would pump the water, that water was pumped up to the Bleecker Reservoir.
Oh, okay.
And it was fed throughout the city. But I think, so that was the situation for quite a while. And I think as disinfection and chlorination was getting to be a little bit more kind of an accepted disinfection process, Albany started chlorinating their water, I think in around in the mid 1900, 1910 in that
Oh,
area.
really? That's
And that was kind of a
way
novel.
early.
That was kind of a novel idea. People thought, hey, we're putting poison in the water because people would think of it as poison gas. Well, chlorine is something that can actually disinfect the water.
But wasn't that if I remember my history, wasn't that a bigger issue like in the late 50s? But Albany started in
Albany started, chlorination was really started early on, and I think
Oh,
it
okay.
became an accepted means of disinfecting water. And in 1913, there was a horrific flood that flooded the Hudson River. I've got pictures maybe that we can put them on the show at some point. There was probably 2 feet of water, 2 or 3 feet of water down Broadway, and it flooded the filter plant. And in spite of all the efforts of the operators to, really work hard to disinfect the water, there was an outbreak of cholera in the city at that point. That began to give people some thoughts about maybe we ought to have a source other than the Hudson River.
Yeah.
So, from the early on when the city, they had this, it was really a private water company that became the Albany Water Works in 1850. Then in 1926, they created the City of Albany Board of Water Supply, and that's when they asked engineers to go out and study what are some alternative sources of water.
And that board is still in existence, right? Is that
Yeah, and a different concept, but that was commissioners, and they commissioned a study that was done that ultimately designed the system that we use today.
Okay.
They looked at a bunch of other sources, that using the Norman's Kill perhaps, or other streams, but they felt to get the safe yield, they really needed to develop a water source supply by damming the Hannacroy Creek up in the town of Queens and farther up in the town of Westerlo, and that created the Alcove water system.
what's that called again? The alcove?
The Alcove water system.
Okay.
So the Alcove it holds about 13 billion gallons. It was dammed and actually came into place in about 1930. That's our primary water supply.
Okay.
It is probably one of the most pristine pure water sources in the Northeast. And we have a supplemental supply in the Basic Creek Reservoir that we built a tunnel to help bring water down to the Alcove in the event that the Alcove water levels were low, and we had to augment the supply to the Alcove. And we use that once in a while.
Is the alcove, is it a reservoir? Is it actually,
It's a huge reservoir.
you can call it a reservoir?
It's a reservoir.
And it can't be used for anything. I mean, can people boat on it or have camps
Well,
on it,
no,
or-
it's actually the state has there's a state law that says you can't really do anything in the
On a
Alcove. It's a water source.
Yeah.
No fishing, no boating. So
That's what I thought, because I'm from Troy, and we were kids. We get the water from Tom Hannock.
yeah.
And we would drive across it, and you never see boats or camps.
You can fish in the Tom
You can,
Hannock.
okay.
You can fish in the Tom Hannock with permits. We don't allow fishing in the Alcove, but we do have permit fishing in the Basic Creek
So,
Reservoir.
but basically, the alcove exists Just for the water?
Just for the water, and we take it pretty seriously because it is our sole source of water,
Okay, so-
and it's a very high quality water supply. So we take the water from the alcove and we pipe it about 12 miles to Bethlehem, where our filter plant is, near the
Okay.
the Conrail
Yeah?
area, down off of Old Quarry Road. Then it goes another 8-10 miles into the city of Albany to the Loudonville Reservoir, which is all by gravity. So this
Really?
whole system,
Okay.
the Basic Creek is about 940 feet above sea level. Alcove is 620
Yeah.
above sea level. Loudonville's 350. So we have 350 feet, and that's a lot of pressure to bring that water by gravity into the city, which helps us.
Does that save money by using gravity?
Saves a ton of money. Gravity's free. It's Mother Nature. You know, one of the free things is gravity for us.
Yeah.
So.
So how many miles of piping, I guess? Not this part from the alcove to
well,
Albany.
outside of the 20 miles of our transmission
Yeah.
piping, we have about 420 miles of water pipe in the city right now.
Okay. And how old is that piping? Because I know, like I mentioned at the very beginning, these old Northeast cities, is that, I read many articles, is that becoming an issue? And
It is. I think, in fact, we have a picture of a wood pipe
yeah, I was looking at that.
from 1797 that we dug out of someplace downtown. And a lot of the pipes in the earlier urban water systems were hollowed-out wood pipes.
Really?
And Albany started using cast iron pipe around 1810, 1813.
Wow,
We have
okay.
some early evidence of that. And we still have some of this old pipe in place. Our atlas maps show a 12-inch pipe in front of City Hall that says 1851, but we think that's when it's dated that way because that's when they transferred the private water company
Yeah.
to this Albany water
Okay.
system. That pipe could have gone back even older than 1850, so that could be approaching 200 years old.
What are the pipes made out of today?
It's a ductile iron pipe, so it's still an iron. It's just the way the pipes are manufactured. Most of the pipe we have in the city is cast iron pipe, and then the newer pipe is ductile iron. Interestingly, when we have pipes that break,
Yeah.
more pipe, it's ductile iron pipe probably breaks for us at a higher frequency or percentage than we do the cast iron pipe. Cast iron pipe is very thick,
Yeah.
and ductile iron is a little thinner. So you got a little more forgiveness on the cast iron pipe, even though it's older.
Okay. So what are some of, how long have you been commissioner? I know I forgot, you told me.
It seems like about 300 years, but it's 3.5 years, but it's probably, and I tell people, I've been working as an engineer since 1973.
Yeah.
This is probably, and I've had great jobs, this is probably the best job I've ever had. We have a chance to really build things and fix things and interact with our customers, and I think we can make a difference. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that we think we're doing, and it really lines up with the mayor's sustainability program. We've been working with the Nature Conservancy for a couple years to develop a program called Working Woodlands. So we have just signed an agreement with the Nature Conservancy for a Working Woodlands project on our alcove forest land property, which is 3,000-4,000 acres. We've mapped every tree on that parcel so we can actually do better timber management and watershed management in the long run, which helps us maintain high water quality. And the secondary benefit of that is by having that inventory, we have a carbon development and marketing agreement so we can actually begin to sell carbon credits from our watershed. And the way we see it now, it looks like that market has a value of between $500,000 and $1 million to the Albany Water Board in the next 10 years.
Okay.
So we're promoting sustainability. It's helping us with long-term watershed management. It's part of our mission to preserve the watershed for future generations, and we're making money doing it.
Okay. So you were the head of the Department of Water and Water Supply, but you keep mentioning the Water Board. Could you explain maybe a little bit what that is? How is that different
in
from
1987, well, the city Department of Water and Water Supply, at that point, the city probably had financial pressures, and the Albany Water Board was created to essentially buy all of the assets, the water and sewer assets from the city.
This is in the 1980s.
In 1987,
Okay.
I think it was. And so, although we are city employees, we're leased
Yeah.
to the Albany Water Board, who owns it and
Oh, so
operates and manages
So the
all
board
assets.
bought in the 80s
Right. They borrowed the money, bought all the assets,
Okay.
and we manage them.
Oh, okay. And then you were saying that was because of financial?
I think it provided an opportunity for the Albany Water Board at that time to take over the assets.
Yeah.
We could maintain, we could do capital improvements on them. We have a municipal finance authority that has borrowing authority as part of the state authority group. And it provided some relief to the city because they didn't have to worry about the expenses of the water and sewer system.
Well, other than this nature conservatory you just mentioned, and you said this was like the best job you had, what else do you like about it? Even though you said it seems like it's been 300 years.
Well, because it seems like we've done 300 years worth of work. And, we're painting the car. When we started, it was like painting a car driving 70.
Oh, okay.
Now we're still painting a car, but it's down to 30.
Yeah, okay.
So I think what we're looking at is we're able to take systems that are probably best practices in other parts of the country that I've been exposed to with my prior experience in consulting engineering. My deputy commissioner, Bill Simcoe, is a tremendously talented professional engineer who's had multiple experiences. So we're bringing these best practices into the water board, and so we're looking at asset management applications. We're mapping our system with geographic information systems that we can not just map our infrastructure, but put some identity to it so we can determine what assets are kind of in worse shape than others that we want to kind of look at replacing. Inventory control, just a lot, making us more of a digital and technology-driven department.
So it sounds like in since you started the last three and a half years, there's been a lot of improvements, a lot of
It's
long-range planning.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to. We run it like a business. I'm 67 years old, so I keep thinking of Art Carney and the Honeymooners. Working in the sewer department. We're not your father's sewer department. We see ourselves as a $40 million a year business. We have 30,000 customers. We're stewards of the Alcove Reservoir, one of the best water supply sources in the Northeast, and we want to run it that way. Okay. When I started working, we have 130 employees who have a new mayor and a new commissioner. I'm coming into a department, I don't know anybody, first time I worked in government, and I want to say, look, I'm Joe Coffey, I'm the new commissioner. And I said, I know everybody's kind of like wondering what's going to go on. I said, here, I just want to look at three things: safety, customer service, and professionalism. Okay. If we do those three things, we're going to keep everybody happy. We want to go home safe every night. Customer service, we answer the phone, we look sharp, we take care of our customers' business, and we act professionally. Whether you like each other or not, be civil.
So no one wears white T-shirts and vests and a little hat like.
Well, we still have the hats. We still have the vests, but they're kind of safety vests, and we got Albany Water Board T-shirts, and they're green. But
so how do you work, or if you do, or how does it work with our surrounding communities? Like, is there some kind of do you work with, say, Troy, Schenectady, Waterville, or is everyone separate? Or
I'm sure they would. In different ways, for the other water systems, if somebody calls and say, hey, do you guys we got an emergency and you have a 16-inch valve? Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got one. Come up, pick it up, and you can pay us back when you get one. But there's other ways that we do it. We have water agreements with Bethlehem and Guilderland that we sell them water. These are long-term contracts that we work, and they're defined, so it helps everybody. Last year, we had a horrific sinkhole that interrupted the transmission of water from our filter plant to our Loudonville Reservoir. And we worked with the Latham Water District. John Fraser, Supervisor Mahan, everybody was very helpful. We ran pipe above ground from Aspinwall Road over to our Loudonville Reservoir, and we were able to get 5-6 million gallons a day, which really helped us for 72 days. It really helped keep our system full.
That made national news, wasn't it?
Yeah, my wife kind of liked it because I lost about 11 pounds in 72 days.
Really?
Yeah, I'd like to lose that weight, but not having sinkholes.
I'm trying to remember. Was that during the summer?
Yeah, it was August.
I was on vacation, and I remember seeing this, and it's like Albany, New York, and I'm like... Yeah,
I wish I was on vacation, too. We had one in June, and then we had another one in August.
But is that just the age of the city streets?
Well, it's interesting because this was the two sinkholes were on the same Beaver Creek trunk sewer on either end of Washington Park Lake, and the sewer was built in about 1875, and it is a circular brick sewer, and it's a combined sewer. So there's a lot of times when it rains real hard, that sewer will be full right to the top. And brick sewer, we think what happened, and when it's under pressure, probably washed some of the area between the bricks, the mortar and the sand out, kind of created a very soft spot on the top of the sewer. And both sinkholes happened in intersections where we have traffic over it with a structure that came out of the brick sewer, and we think the structure is what collapsed, caused a sinkhole.
Now, I'm trying to remember from the point of view, Didn't like a whole car fall in or
Oh,
something?
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So what are...
What's your next question?
Okay. So what are some of the, what's some of your future plans for not only for you and for the water department, other than...
Well, I was going to give you another example of where we interact with other communities.
Oh, okay.
As part of we talk about these combined sewers, we signed a consent order with 5 other communities back in 2013 to abate and minimize and somehow make less of a problem the combined sewer overflows that go into the Hudson River. So it's called the Albany Pool Communities. It's Albany, Troy, Rensselaer, Watervliet, Green Island, and Cohoes.
Okay.
Collectively, the pool communities are committed to a program to do work that either minimizes the amount of sewage going and rainwater going into the combined sewers, or we're going to remove floatables and disinfect our overflows to have less of an impact on the river. That's a pretty novel idea. We've worked together with County Sewer District as part of the County Sewer District, but we're actually sharing the cost. So this is about $100 million program. We have 58% of...
You say 100 million or...
100 million.
A million, okay.
Yeah. M's are bad enough. B's, that's the word, are even worse. But of the 100 million, the water board is responsible for $58 million. Okay. So if we have a project in Albany, we pay 58% of that project. If there's a project in Cohoes, we pay 58% of that project, and all the communities pay 42% of ours. So it's kind of a cool idea. There are grants that help us offset some of that cost, but that's a very good example of intermunicipal cooperation.
And how long has that been going on? Is it just starting?
Well, officially with the consent order was 2013. We've actually done some work before that, and this project will probably go out to about 2027 when all the work has to be done.
All right. So that was another example. So now you can, what are some of the future plans?
Well, I think we're obviously very committed to the CSO program. In the city, we've got, people say, well, what would it cost to replace all your stuff? Well,
I mean the whole...
That would be with a B at the end of it,
Yes.
whatever that number is. It would be a curly number, and we're not going to do that.
Well, you would never replace everything at once.
No, and I don't think you could replace anything anyway because of other challenges. But if somebody gave me a check for $350 million right now, that would probably help. But I think what we're looking to do is, we talked about asset management. So by mapping all of our sewer pipes and water pipes, what we're trying to do, then we inspect them, and we say which pipes and parts of our system have the highest probability of failure. And if they fail, what are the consequences of that? So I live on Cardinal Avenue. I got an 8-inch sewer in front of my house. Well, if that fails, me and 10 of my neighbors are going to have a problem. Well, if the 30-inch sewer in front of Albany Medical Center fails, that's a real big problem.
Exactly.
So if they both have a high probability of failure, the one that has the higher consequence is the one that affects the most customers. That would be the one that we would put higher up on our fixed scale.
You're mapping these out as a...
We've started that program last year, and we're into it. It takes a while because we have so many miles of system pipes.
What you said, how much before? 400?
We got about 420 miles of water pipe. We got 3,500 hydrants, 10,000 valves, 900 miles of sewer pipe, thousands of manholes and catch basins. So we're going to map all of that and do a condition assessment on every one of them.
And then that's a many years long process.
It's a continuous process. And we have a water filter plant. We're doing the same thing with our vertical assets, with our filtration plant, because that was built in 1930, and that's going to need some upgrades as we move on as well.
Okay. Well, that's been a very interesting talk. What have I forgotten anything, Joe? Anything you else want to mention?
Well, one of the things, we talk about it. I get like being here today, I get to be kind of the face of the department, the voice of the department. But I've also been out there when it's January 10th and it's 10 below zero and the wind's blowing and we have a water main break, and I'm looking at 5 guys in a hole working when they could be home with their families. And what I think...
Is it ever 3 in the morning also?
It's any time our guys go out, night or day, whatever the temperature is or the weather conditions, and they work to keep the water flowing and the sewers going. And I keep trying to remind people to never take that for granted.
Yeah, well, I mean, just from the very beginning we're talking, I think water's a vital to life. I mean, it's something that people sort of take for granted, so... So, and you said you had how many employees, 130?
Right now, we've got about 150, so we actually have added staff because as part of our compliance with the consent order and looking to do the things that we need to do, we're actually staffing up.
Yeah.
When I started, we had 2 people in our engineering group. I'm an engineer, Deputy Commissioner Sinkholes, a PE, and now we've got about 5 people in our engineering group, so we're doing more of our work in-house to try to help some of our, manage our expenses a little bit as well.
I mean, I think we've all seen your guys out there at various times and in all kinds of weather, so they do keep the water flowing.
They do a great job.
All right, so thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we will see you next time on Getting to Know You.